Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £1 billion every year. That's almost £3.5 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing just under 15 fake claims every hour, armed with covert surveillance systems.
That's a subject out the vehicle.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a number of highly skilled police units. They're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Today, car insurance fraud, a victim's story.
I felt absolutely sick knowing that I'd been driving around uninsured all that time. One of the worst days of my life.
A tall tale about a mugging is knocked back.
I'm sorry, you expect me to believe that you've just been robbed by knife point, and instead of phoning 999 from home, you decided to walk an hour and a half to the police station?
Yeah, I thought it was more practical.
And an American woman's appearance on national television leads to her come-on downfall. The City of London Police's Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, or IFED, is a dedicated team of detectives committed to stopping insurance fraud cheats.
Since IFED started at the beginning of 2012, 1,200 individuals have been either arrested or interviewed under caution, suspected of insurance fraud.
This elite squad has prevented millions of pounds being paid out to criminals in fraudulent claims. From now on, insurance cheats need to look over their shoulders.
Insurance fraud isn't easy money. It has risks and consequences. You can get a criminal conviction and you can go to jail.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
One particular problem is ghost broking. DS Mark Forster knows how this scam works only too well.
Ghost broking is effectively the unlawful selling of insurance policies. It's done by criminals who will sell you forged documents in the belief that you have bought legitimate insurance cover when in fact you haven't.
The more sophisticated ghost brokers use inside knowledge of the industry to appear legitimate. But people like Alison Middleton of TradeWise know exactly how their scams work and how to spot them.
Our policies are motor trade policies, which provide cover for persons that are involved in the motor trade, and the cover afforded under these policies is for a number of vehicles rather than one vehicle which you'd see on a private car policy. Therefore, making motor trade policies attractive to somebody who's trying to set up a ghost broking organisation, because they can put a number of vehicles onto those policies, which would then all be flagged up on the motor insurer's database and appearing as genuinely insured.
In December 2013, TradeWise were approached by a member of the public who believed they were insured with the company.
They'd been experiencing some problems in obtaining documentation and getting hold of their broker, and having looked into it themselves, they managed to find that the vehicle was insured through TradeWise by looking on the motor insurer's database.
However, TradeWise doesn't cater directly to members of the public. They decided to take a closer look to see if there was indeed a connection to the car.
We identified that the vehicle in question had been placed on one of our motor trade policies, and that's where our investigation started. The indicators showed that the risk had potential to be involved with ghost broking.
At the same time, IFED had been alerted to a pattern of suspicious activity.
A large number of individuals reported to Action Fraud that they had purchased insurance for their vehicle through a company by the name of Personal Touch.
Web-based Personal Touch insurance was run by just one man based in Andover.
Inquiries showed that this company did not exist. Once we started to look at the bank accounts and also the insurance policies that had been set up in order to facilitate this fraud, it soon became apparent that there was just one individual that was behind all of it.
That individual was James Clark Tomlinson.
He'd set up what looked like a genuine insurance intermediary, and through that company he was supplying members of the public with certificates, cover notes, documentation which they would have believed had been issued by an insurance company, and therefore showing that they had a real insurance policy in place.
But the vehicles appeared on the motor insurance database in name only, and there was never any actual insurance cover. Clark Tomlinson was simply pocketing his victims' money.
Approximately 150 victims had purchased insurance through Personal Touch. It was apparently £60,000 had gone through his account in just over a 12-month period.
But it wasn't just strangers who'd found his website that were targeted. He was prepared to deceive those closest to him.
Clark Tomlinson would befriend a number of his victims. He would become friends with them. He would circulate in their communities. He was a car enthusiast, as were a number of his victims.
One of whom was Vicky Small.
I've got a limited edition Subaru Impreza. It's number 6 of 100 Acropolis Rally limited editions that were made in 1993 in Japan.
But as Tomlinson well knew, getting affordable insurance for high-performance cars isn't easy, which made people like Vicky more vulnerable to the scam.
I met James Clark Tomlinson at Bournemouth Pride in 2013. After we'd done the parade and everything, we all came back to my house. And it was there that he was telling not just me, but everybody else about his insurance company, or the company that he worked for, how they would beat any other quote by a minimum of 20%, or they'll give you £100. Sounded like he knew what he was talking about. He said all the right things. He'd been working in insurance for a long time. I spoke to him about 2 days later, and that was when I took out the policy.
And it wasn't just Vicky who was caught in the fraud.
Every one of those 150 victims thought they had purchased legitimate car insurance to drive their vehicles on the road. In fact, they were not insured at all. They had a false certificate, they didn't have any insurance, and therefore not only were they putting themselves at risk whilst by driving on the road, but also other road users.
Clark Tomlinson even went so far as to offer his so-called customers rewards for recommending others.
I recommended not only friends in the car scene, in the modified car scene, I recommended family, friends, people that I've known for years.
The introduction of this loyalty scheme showed how greedy Clark Tomlinson was, how determined and underhanded he was.
A lot of my friends do have high-performance cars, and they're a lot younger than me, and they do struggle with insurance, you know, the cost of it. So I thought, 2 birds with 1 stone. My friends are going to be getting a really good, amazing deal, not only prices, but a great level of cover, and I'm helping a new company to flourish. You know, I just really wanted to help everybody.
But just 6 months later, Vicky's world crumbled.
A friend of mine messaged me and then phoned me and said that his car, he had a letter from the motor insurance database saying that his car wasn't insured. He tried to phone the number in the Manchester offices of Personal Touch Insurance and he couldn't get through. So then I tried phoning, couldn't get through, and it was then that a couple more people emailed me, and then we realised that it was just a massive con. I felt absolutely sick knowing that I'd been driving around uninsured all that time. And unfortunately, I believe for some other drivers, people have had accidents, had points, had fines, lost their cars because they thought they were insured and they weren't.
On hearing the news, Vicky moved quickly.
The next step for me was to alert as many of my friends as possible. One of the worst days of my life. It was horrible. I had a few people come round and see me. There was tears. People were angry. People were shouting.
But for Vicky, things were about to get a lot worse.
Vicky Small had had a serious heart condition for some time. Clark Tomlinson was aware of this, and yet, despite the fact that they became quite good friends and Vicky Small trusted him, He continued to lie and defraud her.
The stress was horrendous, and I ended up in hospital shortly after.
But unbeknownst to him, the man who'd exploited Vicky and others was being tracked by IFED. Initially, he proved as elusive as his fake policies.
We established that a number of the victims knew Clark Tomlinson by various different names. He seemed to frequent different addresses in different areas of the country, and one initial report we had at the very beginning of the investigation, when he was first identified, suggested that he was actually working on a cruise ship.
But before he could sail off into the sunset, IFED officers tracked him down.
When IFED detectives arrested Clark Tomlinson, he was extremely upset. He seemed surprised that the police had managed to find him, and he became very obstructive. He was a very obnoxious individual, so much so that during the police interview, he decided that he'd had enough and didn't want to answer any more questions, and that it was a waste of his time, so he turned off the recording equipment halfway through the interview.
Despite this behaviour, IFED was able to build a watertight case against Clark Tomlinson, and before long, it was time for him to face justice.
In May 2015, Clark Tomlinson appeared at Southampton Crown Court, and he pleaded guilty to 18 counts of forgery and fraud.
Attending court was Vicky, the victim who had at one point counted him as a friend.
When it was time for the sentencing, because he did plead guilty, I felt that I needed to be there.
Clark Tomlinson's £60,000 fraud resulted in a sentence of 4 years behind bars.
No amount of money for me will ever undo the damage that's psychologically and physically been done to me. People like James Clark Tomlinson are just scum. They don't care who they hurt, the consequences they leave behind. All they want to do is get as much money as quick as possible.
Clark Tomlinson was an extremely arrogant individual who thought that the police wouldn't catch up with him. My message to any other would-be insurance fraudster is that you will not get away with your crime, and that the police will catch up with you, and detectives from IFED will ensure that you receive the most severe penalties at court for your actions.
Later, a dodgy medical claim has a whiff of trouble.
Our investigator also noted that the operation was listed as rhinoplasty.
And an unconvincing tale about a mugging is dealt a blow.
The account that you've given me is simply not believable, I'm afraid.
No, okay.
Come on now!
The famous 3 words that give contestants on America's Price is Right game show the chance to make their dreams come true with a big money win. Lucky Kathy Caswell pumped the air as she took to the floor. But would her luck continue?
Kathy. $1,000. And Molly.
801, Drew!
801. Actual retail price is $1,375. Kathy, come on up here.
Thinking her luck was well and truly in, Kathy elbowed her way onto the stage, barely able to contain her excitement.
Nice to see you.
We have a trip to Palm Springs and a trip to Santa Barbara.
But appearing on one of the nation's biggest game shows with millions of viewers exposed the web of lies she'd been spinning.
Oh, I hope you're right. Now she's going to try to beat 80 cents. Whenever you're ready.
In truth, Caswell was already cashing in, to the tune of thousands of dollars in workers' compensation. Some years prior to her appearance on the show, the former postal worker had claimed that a serious workplace shoulder injury meant that she couldn't stand, sit, kneel, squat, climb, bend, reach, or grasp. As a result, she'd been collecting compensation since 2005.
Sorry, Kathy.
So she shouldn't have been able to do this. This, and certainly not this. That's right, in addition to appearing on national TV, Kathy Caswell had also posted a photo on social media that showed her arms high, paragliding.
You tell me where that price goes, and you're going to win both trips.
Santa Barbara.
Santa Barbara. And when I say 3, flip it up. 1, 2, 3. You got it! Go to Bear Barber, go to Palm Springs, $5,000 worth of travel.
But in reality, Kathy Cashwell was going nowhere except court. Unsurprisingly, her ill-judged Price is Right appearance tipped off investigators that she was pulling a fast one. Evidently, she didn't think through the consequences of being pictured on national TV, standing, reaching, and grasping. Things she claimed to be unable to do. On September 11, 2013, she was sentenced to 3 years of probation and was ordered to pay back the agreed amount of $30,000. Finally, it was time for her to shoulder the blame. What do you get when you combine 15 years' experience of policing, hostage negotiation skills, and a degree in psychology? You get Tara Shelton from ICOG. Her unique background means that she can identify fraud more swiftly than normal.
Our specialism predominantly surrounds something called conversation management.
This comes into play when Tara and her team talk to claimants on the phone.
We use very gentle techniques to identify fraud faster, but those techniques are significantly embedded on a cognitive and psychological basis.
For insurance cheats, there's nowhere to hide.
If someone is lying, we'll know.
Often, it's the small giveaways that make Tara suspicious. Things that might not be obvious to you or I, but stand out a mile to an expert. In one recent case, a photographer claimed that he'd been the victim of a serious offence.
He said he decided to go to the local park to take some moody photographs in the bad weather. However, when he got all of the equipment out in the park in order to take the shots, he was approached by 3 youths in hoodies who presented a large knife out of the pocket, threatened him. He then handed his equipment over, went home, and then reported the matter to the police. The total value of the claim was approximately around £50,000, and the equipment ranged from a MacBook through to different types of cameras, different types of lenses, all of which are quite high in value.
Not only was the claimant seriously out of pocket, but his livelihood was on the line too.
We did identify that the claimant was genuinely a paparazzi, quite a well-known paparazzi individual.
Meaning that without his camera, he couldn't work, and therefore had no money coming in. As always, before making contact with the claimant, Tara did her homework.
What was interesting when we carried out some further research is he had changed his name on 3 occasions previously, was being again chased by debt collectors, and was now, as a grown man, living with his mother.
It was time for Tara to get a fuller picture of the case.
It's Tara Shelton from ICOG about your insurance claim.
Yep.
Hi, is now still a good time to talk?
Yeah, it's a good time now.
I found the claimant quite a fascinating character because he described a knife point robbery in the most vaguest, shortest, non-emotional detail I think I've probably ever heard.
And there was like about 3 guys, well I wouldn't say about, there's 3 guys there hanging around in the background, and basically they were watching what I was doing. When I went to pack up, I basically got approached, knife point, and I had my equipment taken away from me. And they went one way, and I went the other.
Can you just expand a little bit more on that for me, please?
If someone has genuinely been held up at knife point, it should be either quite a traumatic incident or certainly an incident where you can provide some detail, but there was nothing like that at all.
And I know this might be quite difficult when you try and put it into words, but can you try and describe for me how he was holding the knife in order to make you feel threatened?
Oh, cool. Well, he had it in his right hand, so then he just had it. I don't know. He just had it in his hand. I think that's quite threatening enough as it is. I couldn't believe it myself. If
he couldn't believe it, how did he expect others to? At this point, the conversation started to get even more surreal.
And on top of this, he still remained very kind of non-emotional, but he was also making really inappropriate jokes, which I found quite bizarre, considering you're talking about a knife-point robbery.
And their English is quite appalling.
Sorry, when you say his English is quite appalling, what do you mean?
Well, it just sounded like, you know, something out of that Halfords advert.
No, sorry, I don't know that one.
Well, it's like wannabe Cockney.
Would you, Adam and Eve it? At this stage, he probably wanted to put down the dog and bone, but Tara wasn't done yet.
And have you had victims of crime come out and visit you?
No. What do they do?
They help victims of cases like this just to give them reassurance and any guidance that they
If they bring a bottle of whiskey, that might work.
But hitting the hard stuff wasn't going to help, and in reality, the photographer had shot himself in the foot. Tara could see right through the snapper's flimsy story.
People scrabble to spontaneously lie. And when they are in a position where they have to spontaneously lie, what happens is the brain goes into a meltdown. The cracks were just getting more and more and more obvious to me.
How confident are you that everything you've told me so far is absolutely true and correct?
Confident. As confident as my memory goes. Not everyone remembers things in great detail.
You sound a bit nervous, that's all.
Well, it is. Actually, this questionnaire is getting a bit long.
Sorry to keep you, mate. For Tara, there was one moment where the photographer's account really started to lose all focus.
The main game changer was actually my natural response to something that he said to me, which was that he walked home quite calmly after this had happened. Even though there was a landline available in the home, he decided not to call 999 there and to walk to the police station. And then I asked how far the police station was away.
According to the claimant, it was just down the road.
When you say just down the road, how far is it?
It's about hour and a half's walk.
An hour and a half's walk?
Yeah.
That is one heck of a long road, and unfortunately for him, it finished in a dead end.
I'm sorry, you expect me to believe that you've just been robbed by knife point, and instead of phoning 999 from home, you decided to walk an hour and a half to the police station?
Yeah, I thought it was more practical.
It's simply not believable, to be honest.
No, okay.
Yeah, okay. Surely a genuine claimant would be protesting their innocence at this point. Tara had heard enough.
The account that you've given me is simply not believable, I'm afraid. I believe the reason the claim has been made is to assist in your financial situation. So, with that in mind, how would you like to proceed?
Well, I mean, is this now going to become like a court case thing now? So what do I do now? Do I just find an attorney now? Do I fight my case?
Well, I'm not here to advise you. I'm the one that is telling you that I've got concerns, and the insurers do have concerns, which is why it has been passed to me.
Finally, the photojournalist accepted that his story had been spiked.
He completely underestimated the level of detail that is required, and ultimately he failed at the first hurdle.
But there was a way to pick himself back up. Tara had already agreed a strategy with the insurance company.
When I outlined that one of the options that the insurer was willing to accept a withdrawal of the claim, he was quite happy to withdraw the claim, thanked me for my time and for my professionalism.
Clearly, he realised that he'd more than met his match.
Well, thank you for your patience, and I know you've been very professional. And wow, that was the hardest interview I ever had.
The newsman had been well and truly scooped. Holidays should be spent on the beach, not in a hospital emergency department. But that's where one unfortunate traveller ended up. Sega, a company that provides global travel and medical claims services, processed the paperwork. Simon Cook is their head of special investigations.
The customer told us that while she was on holiday in Lebanon, due to an accident, she had to have an emergency operation to her nose.
And that she wanted to claim for the cost on her travel insurance.
The value of the claim was approximately £2,000.
Covering medical costs abroad is all part of the package that SIGA provides.
On the face of it, we had no reason to doubt that this was a valid claim.
And it was only when they began to sniff around that there were concerns.
It is a condition of this particular insurance policy that you contact the emergency medical helpline if you require an operation, so that we can ensure that you're getting the right treatment.
But there had never been any communication from the claimant.
Most genuine customers want to contact our medical emergency helpline because it is quite a daunting experience being in hospital overseas.
And there was one thing in particular which made them sniff danger.
Our medical expert explained that there were no x-rays or any other tests carried out, so they were unsure how they could determine whether an operation was required.
The lack of assessment of her injuries clearly went against normal medical practice.
To perform an operation such as this without first conducting x-rays or some form of tests goes against normal medical practice. Due to the concerns we had with the claim, we decided to conduct a telephone interview with the customer.
SIGA's investigator sensed that there was something iffy about the nose injury story itself.
The customer told us that she'd been chasing her daughter around her sister's flat. Unfortunately, she ran straight into a glass door. The first question that sprung to mind for our investigator was, well, what happened to your daughter? Surely, if the customer was chasing after her daughter round the flat, then her daughter must have hit the glass door first. At this point, there was a long, awkward silence, and we had to actually check whether the customer was still on the line. The customer broke her silence, and she told us that she'd got the circumstances incorrect. She was in fact being chased by her daughter, as opposed to her chasing her daughter.
The story was starting to reek, and the investigator decided to nose around the doctor, who was genuine enough.
However, the doctor did not specialise in emergency medical treatment.
SIGA then took the radical step of appointing an overseas investigator to pay the doctor a visit in person.
Our investigator made an appointment at the hospital to speak with the doctor, and when our investigator arrived, the doctor was well aware that we were going to be visiting. Without even referring to any paperwork, the doctor actually validated the claim and said that our customer had received an emergency medical operation. The doctor actually told us that he had nothing further to add to the situation and left.
Undeterred, the investigator spoke to the hospital receptionist, and it was at this point that things started to get interesting.
She then decided to bring up the official computer records in front of our investigator. Our investigator also noted that the operation was listed as rhinoplasty. This is more commonly known as a nose job.
A cosmetic procedure, definitely not something associated with a medical emergency.
Given the significant inconsistencies with the circumstances the customer provided us with, we were satisfied that the incident involving her running into a glass door did not happen.
They saw right through the story to the likely explanation.
As far as we were concerned, this was a case of medical tourism, and the customer had travelled to Lebanon with the intention of having a nose job whilst on holiday.
Needless to say, travel insurance doesn't cover this type of plastic surgery, and the claim was declined.
The customer initially tried to contest our decision, but after we wrote back to her, she decided not to pursue the claim any further.
Shown that she knows what's good for her, the woman finally walked away.
This investigation just proves that we take a hard-nosed approach to investigating fraud.